No doubt we seem a kind of monster to you. We are used to that, for women up till this, cramped under worse than South Sea Isle taboo, dwarfs of the gynaecum fail so far. In high desire, they know not, cannot guess, how much their welfare is a passion to us. If we could give them surer, quicker proof, oh, if our end were less achievable by slow approaches than by single act of immolation, any phase of death, we were as prompt to spring against the pikes, or down to the fiery gulf, as talk of it. To compass our dear sister's liberties, she bowed as if to veil a noble tear, and up we came to where the river sloped, to plunge in cataract, shattering on black blocks. A breath of thunder o'er it shook the woods, and danced the color, and below stuck out the bones of some vast bulk that lived and roared before man was. She gazed awhile and said, as these rude bones to us, are we to her that will be? Dare we dream of that? I asked, which wrought us as the workman and his work? That practice betters. How, she cried, you love the metaphysics? Read and earn our prize. A golden brooch beneath an emerald plain sits Diotima, teaching him that died of hemlock our device, wrought to the life she wrapped upon her subjects, he on her. For there are schools for all, and yet I said, methinks I have not found among them all one anatomic. Nay, we thought of that, she answered, but it pleased us not. In truth we shudder but to dream our maid should ape those monstrous males that carve the living hound, and cram him with the fragments of the grave, are in the dark dissolving human heart and holy secrets of this microcosm, dabbling a shameless hand with shameful jest. Incarnalize their spirits, yet we know knowledge is knowledge, and this matter hangs, howbeit ourself, foreseeing casualty, not willing men should come among us, learnt, for many weary moons before we came, this craft of healing, were you sick ourself, would tend upon you. To your question now, which touches on the workman and his work, let there be light, and there was light, 'tis so, for was and is and will be are, but is, and all creation is one act at once, the birth of light. But we that are not all as parts can see but parts, now this, now that, and live perforce from thought to thought, and make one act a phantom of succession. Thus our weakness somehow shapes the shadow, time, but in the shadow will we work and mold the woman to the fuller day. She spake. With kindled eyes we rode a league beyond, and o'er a bridge of pinewood crossing, came on flowery levels, underneath the crag, full of all beauty. How sweet, I said, for I was half oblivious of my mask, to linger here with one that loved us. Yea, she answered, are with fair philosophies that lift the fancy. For indeed these fields are lovely, lovelier not the Elysian lawns, where placed the demigods of old, and saw the soft white vapor streak the crowned towers, built to the sun. Then turning to her maids, pitch our pavilion here. Upon the sward, lay out the viands. At the word, they raised a tent of satin, elaborately wrought, with fair Carina's triumph. Here she stood, and girt with many a florid maiden cheek. The woman conquered there, the bearded victor of 10,000 hymns, and all the men mourned at his side. But we set forth to climb, then climbing, Cyril kept with Psyche, with Melissa, Florian, I with mine affianced. Many a little hand glanced like a touch of sunshine on the rocks. Many a light foot shone like a jewel set about the cliffs. And copses out and in, hammering and clinking, chattering stony names of shales, hornblende, rog, trap, and tough. Amygdaloid and trachite, till the sun grew broader toward his death and fell, and all the rosy heights came out above the lawns. And some people will think that I can't do my work until until I get a certain position. And dark or light, we have that opportunity to be as the heroes of old. Those heroes that some people would have even called gods. There sinks the nebulous star we call the sun. At that hypothesis of theirs be sound, said Ida, let us down and rest. And we down from the lean and wrinkled precipices, by every coppice, feathered chasm and cleft, drop through the ambrosial gloom to where below, no bigger than a glowworm shone the tent, lamp lit from the inner. Once she leaned on me, descending. Once or twice she leant her hand, and blissful palpitations in the blood, stirring a sudden transport, rose and fell. But when we planted level feet and dipped beneath the satin dome and entered in, there leaning, deep embroidered down we sank, our elbows on a tripod. In the midst, a fragrant flame rose, and before us glowed fruit, blossom, viand, amber wine, and gold. Then she let someone sing to us, lightly remove. The minutes fledged with music, and a maid of those beside her smote her harp and sang. Tears, idle tears, I know not what they mean. Tears from the depth of some divine despair rise in the heart and gather to the eyes. And looking on the happy autumn fields and thinking of the days that are no more, fresh as the first beam glittering on a sail that brings our friends up from the underworld, sad as the last which reddens over one that sinks with all we love below the verge, so sad, so fresh, the days that are no more. Ah, sad and strange as in the dark summer dawns, the earliest pipe of half-awakened birds to dying ears, when unto dying eyes the casement slowly grows and a glimmering square. So sad, so strange, the days that are no more, dear as remembered kisses after death, and sweet as those by hopeless fancy find on lips that are for others deep as love, deep as first love, and wild with all regret. O death and life, the days that are no more. She ended with such passion that the terror she sang of shook and fell, an erring pearl lost in her bosom, but with some disdain answered the princess, if indeed there haunt about the mouldered lodges of the past so sweet a voice and vague, fatal to men, well needs it we should not cram our ears with wool and so pace by, but thine our fancies hatched in silken folded idleness, nor is it wiser to weep a true occasion lost, but trim our sails and let old bygones be, while down the streams that float us each and all to the issue goes like glittering bergs of ice. Throne after throne, and molten on the waste becomes a cloud, for all things serve their time toward that great year of equal mights and rights, nor would I fight with iron laws in the end, found golden. Let the past be past, let their cancelled fables, though the rough kecks break, the starred mosaic and the beard-blown goat hang on the shaft, and the wild fig tree split, their monstrous idols care not, while we hear a trumpet in the distance, pealing news of better and hope. A poising eagle burns above the unrisen morrow. Then to me, know you no song of your own land, she said, not such as moans about the retrospect, but deals with the other distance and the hues of promise, not the death's head at the wine. Then I remembered. One myself had made, what time I watched the swallow winging south, from mine own land, part made long since, and part now while I sang, and maiden-like as far as I could ape their treble, did I sing. O swallow, swallow, flying, flying south, fly to her and fall upon her gilded eaves, and tell her what I tell to thee. O tell her, swallow, that thou knowest each, that bright and fierce and fickle is the south, and dark and true and tender is the north. O swallow, swallow, if I could follow and light upon her lattice, I would pipe and trill, and cheep and twitter 20,000,000 loves. O were I thou, that she might take me in and lay me on her bosom, and her heart would rock the snowy cradle till I died. Why lingereth she to clothe her heart with love, delaying as the tender ash delays to clothe herself, when all the woods are green? O tell her, swallow, that thy brood is flown. Say to her, I do but wanton in the south, but in the north long since my nest is made. O tell her, brief is life, but love is long, and brief the sun of summer in the north, and brief the moon of beauty in the south. O swallow, flying from the golden woods, fly to her and pipe and woo her, and make her mine, and tell her, that I follow thee. I ceased, and all the ladies each at each, like the Ethasensian suitors in old time, starred with great eyes and laughed with alien lips, and knew not what they meant, for still my voice rang false. But smiling not for thee, she said, O Bulbul, any rose of Gulistan shall burst her veil, marsh divers rather maid shall croak thee, sister, or the meadow crake, great her harsh kindred in the grass, and this a mere love poem. Oh, for such, my friend, we hold them slight. They mind us of the time when we made bricks in Egypt, knaves are men, that lute and flute fantastic tenderness, and dress the victim to the offering up, and paint the gates of hell with paradise, and play the slave to gain the tyranny. Poor soul, I had a maid of honor once. She wept her true eyes blind for such a one, a rogue of canzonets and serenades. I loved her. Peace be with her. She is dead. So they blaspheme the muse. But great is song, used to great ends, ourself have often tried. Valkyrian hymns, or into rhythm have dashed the passion of the prophetess, for song is doer unto freedom, force and growth, a spirit than to junketing and love. Love is it? Would this same mock love and this mock hymen were laid up like winter bats, till all men grew to rate us at our worth, not vassals to be beat, nor pretty babes to be dandled, no, but living wills, and sphered, whole in ourselves, and owed to none. Enough, but now to leaven play with profit, you know no song, the true growth of your soil, that gives the manners of your country women. And, well, if you're going to offer peace or something to the dead or something, well, we don't really know what people's state is because of their internal spiritual, mental involvement, but, you know, based on the external. So before you pray for the dead, you should have some grasp of who the person was, or somebody testifying that they're being prayed for by the right community. She spoke, and turned her sumptuous head with eyes of shining expectation fixed on mine. Then, while I dragged my brains for such a song, Cyril, with whom the bell-mouthed glass had wrought, are mastered by the sense of sport, began to troll a careless tavern catch of Moll and Meg, and strange experiences, unmet for ladies. Florian nodded at him, I frowning, psych, flushed and waned and shook. Flushed and waned and shook. The lily-like Melissa dropped her brows. Forbear, the princess cried, forbear, sir. I, and heated through and through with wrath and love, I smote him on the breast. He started up. There rose a shriek as of a city sacked. Melissa clamored, flee the death. To horse, said Ida, home to horse, and fled, as flies a troop of snowy doves, athwart the dusk, when someone batters at the dovecote doors, disorderly, the women. Alone I stood with Florian, cursing Cyril, vexed at heart, in the pavilion. There, like parting hopes, I heard them passing from me, hoof by hoof, and every hoof a knell to my desires, clanged on the bridge, and then another shriek. The head, the princess, oh, the head. For blind with rage she missed the plank, and rolled in the river. Out I sprang from glow to gloom. There whirled her white robe like a blossomed branch, wrapped to the horrible fall. A glance I gave, no more, but woman vested as I was, plunged, and the flood drew, yet I caught her. Then, oaring one arm, and bearing in my left the weight of all the hopes of half the world, strove to buffet, to land in vain. A tree was half disrooted from his place, and stooped to wrench his dark locks in the gurgling wave mid-channel. Right on this we drove and caught, and grasping down the boughs I gained the shore. There stood her maidens, glimmeringly grouped in the hollow bank. One reaching forward drew My burthen from mine arms, they cried, she lives. They bore her back into the tent, but I, so much a kind of shame within me wrought, not yet endured to meet her opening eyes, nor found my friends, but pushed alone on foot, for since her horse was lost, I left her mine, across the woods and lest from Indian craft. Then belike instinct hiveward, found at length the garden portals, two great statues, art and science, caryatids lifted up, a weight of emblem, and betwixt were values of open work, in which the hunter rued his rash intrusion, manlike, but his brows had sprouted, and the branches thereupon spread out at top, and grimly spiked the gates. A little space was left between the horns, through which I clambered o'er at top with pain, dropped on the sward, and up the linden walks, and tossed on thoughts that changed from hue to hue, now pouring on the glowworm, now the star. I paced the terrace till the bear had wheeled through a great arc his 7 slow suns. There we go with astrology again. A step of lightest echo, then a loftier form, then female moving through uncertain gloom, disturbed me with the doubt. If his were she, but it was Florian. Hist, oh hist, he said. They seek us. Out so late is out of rules. While overseas the strangers is the cry. How came you here? I told him. I, said he, last of the train, a moral leper, I, to whom none spake, half sick at heart, returned. Yeah, even if you're last, it's important to finish, Arriving, all confused, among the rest, with hooded brows I crept into the hall, and couched behind a Judith, underneath the head of Holofernes, peeped and saw, girl after girl, was called to trial. Each disclaimed all knowledge of us. Last of all, Melissa. Trust me, sir. I pitied her. She questioned as if she knew us men at first, was silent, closer pressed, denied it not, and then demanded if her mother knew. Our psyche, she affirmed not, are denied, from whence the royal mind, familiar with her, easily gathered either guilt. She sent for Psyche, but she was not there. She called for Psyche's child, to cast it from the doors. She sent for Blanc to accuse her face to face, and I slipped out. But whither will you now? And where are Psyche and Cyril? Both are fled. What if together? That were not so well. Would rather we had never come. I dread his wildness, and the chances of the dark. And yet, I said, you wrong him more than I, that struck him. This is proper to the clown. Though smocked are furred and purpled, still the clown, to harm the thing that trusts him, and to shame that which he says he loves. For Cyril, however, he deal in frolic, as tonight the song might have been worse, and sinned in grosser lips, beyond all pardon, as it is, I hold. These flashes on the surface are not he. He has a solid base of temperament, but as the water lily starts and slides upon the level, in little puffs of wind. Though anchored to the bottom, such is he. Scarce had I ceased, when from a tamarisk near, 2 proctors leapt upon us, crying, "Names!" He, standing still, was clutched, but I began to thrid the musky circled mazes, wind and double in and out of the bowls, and race by all the fountains. Fleet I was afoot. Before me showered the rose in flakes. Behind I heard the puffed pursuer. At mine ear bubbled the nightingale, and heeded not, and secret laughter tickled all my soul. At last I hooked my ankle in a vine that clasped the feet of Mnemosyne, and falling on my face was caught and known. They hailed us to the princess, where she sat high in the hall. Above her drooped a lamp, and made the single jewel on her brow burn like the mystic fire of a masthead. Prophet of storm, a handmaid on each side, bowed toward her, combing out her long black hair, damp from the river, and close behind her stood 8 daughters of the plough, stronger than men, huge women, bloused with health and rock and rain and labor. Each was like a druid rock, or like a spire of land that stands apart, cleft from the main, and wailed about with muse. Then, as we came, the crowd dividing clave, an advent to the throne, and there beside, half naked as if caught at once from bed, and tumbled on the purple footcloth, lay the lily shining child, and on the left, bowed on her palms and folded up from wrong, her round white shoulder shaken with her sobs. Melissa knelt, but Lady Blanc, erect, stood up and spake, an affluent orator. It was not thus, O princess, in old days. You prized my counsel, lived upon my lips. I led you then to all the Castalies. I fed you with the milk of every muse. I loved you like this kneeler, and you me, your second mother. Those were gracious times. Then came your new friend. You began to change. I saw it and grieved to slacken and to cool, till taken with her seeming openness, you turned your warmer currents all to her. To me you froze. This was my need for all. Yet I bore up in part from ancient love, and partly that I hoped to win you back, and partly conscious of my own deserts, and partly that you were my civil head, and chiefly you were born for something great, in which I might your fellow worker be. One time should serve, and thus a noble scheme grew up from seed we too long since had sown. In us true growth, in her a Jonah's gourd. Up in one night, and due to sudden sun, we took this palace, but even from the first, you stood in your own light and darkened mine. What student came, but that you planned her path? To Lady Psyche, younger, not so wise, a foreigner, and I your countryman, and I your countrywoman. I your old friend and tried, she knew in all, but still her lists were swelled and mine were lean, yet I bore up in hope she would be known. Then came those wolves, they knew her, they endured, long closeted with her the yestermorn, to tell her what they were, and she to hear, and me none told, not less to an eye like mine, a lidless watcher of the public weal. Last night their mask was patient, and my foot was to you, but I thought again, I feared to meet a cold. We thank you, we shall hear of it from Lady Psyche. You had gone to her, she told perforce, and winning easy grace, no doubt, for slight delay remained among us, in our young nursery, still unknown, the stem less grain than touchwood, while my honest heat were all miscounted as malignant haste, to push my rival out of place and power. But public use required she should be known. And since my oath was taken for public use, I broke the letter of it to keep the sense. I spoke not then at first, but watched them well, saw that they kept apart, no mischief done, and yet this day, though you should hate me for it, I came to tell you, found that you had gone, ridden to the hills, she likewise, now I thought, that surely she will speak, if not, then I. Did she, these monsters blazoned what they were, according to the coarseness of their kind, for thus I hear and known at last my work, and full of cowardice and guilty shame, I grant in her some sense of shame she flies, and I remain on whom to wreak your rage. I that have lent my life to build up yours, I that have wasted here health, wealth, and time, and talent, I, you know it, I will not boast. Dismiss me, and I prophesy your plan. Divorced from my experience will be chaff for every gust of chance, and men will say, we did not know the real light, but chased the wisp that flickers where no foot can tread. Sometimes it's important to question what we're told the rules are. She ceased. The princess answered coldly, good, your oath is broken, we dismiss you, go. For this lost lamb, she pointed to the child, our mind is changed. We take it to ourself.